Safety systems armed. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Endeavour.
Every hero needs a team.
Houston now controlling.
From astronauts to athletes to our everyday heroes. A team that stands by them, that backs them up when they most need it, that elevates them to their highest potential. In the last 20 years, OutSystems has been there with you, supporting you as you break boundaries, as you transform the ordinary into extraordinary, with an unwavering spirit of innovation. Every hero needs a team. Through it all, you have been our hero, and we have forged this journey together as one.
Good morning. I'm Andrea from the community team at OutSystems, and I am honored to welcome you to the first ever edition of the ONE Conference in Lisbon. Yay! In 2018, almost exactly 5 years ago, we were hosting the OutSystems Developer Conference, or ODC, as some of you may remember it. It was the first ever developer community gathering, and it was the biggest one that we had done at the time. We were never able to do anything like that again. For those of you who were there, we had 9 tracks, 90 sessions, a full packed auditorium just like this. And then COVID hit, virtual gatherings came, and nothing was ever the same. This energy, this spirit that you feel if you look around, you can't get that virtually. It doesn't resonate the same. At the time, I was part of the closing ceremony, and I remember looking at the audience exactly the way I'm looking at you right now. And if you could only see what I'm seeing, this is incredible. 5 years later, we're back, bigger than ever, stronger than ever, and it's all due to you. So thank you for being here. It's an honor to host you today. We're already starting out a little late, but we have 2 days of curated, awesome sessions, content, booths, sponsors ready for you. So let's have some fun, shall we? Please join me in welcoming, with a very loud, big, energetic applause, OutSystems CEO Paulo Rosado.
Is she a nice person or not? Wow. Welcome, everyone. 5 years ago, I was here. I had a little chair. And I turn around the chair, I sit down, and I just had a conversation. We're going to do this way more formal today because I'm going to stand up. But in the meantime, I want to welcome everyone because the dynamics of this type of community, this community in particular, is fantastic. And I think one of the reasons why it's fantastic is because the world is coming closer and closer to the vision that OutSystems had back in 2001. And I'm very, very happy that you guys selected OutSystems as a big part of your career and that we're paying you back by giving you 10 years, the next 10 to 15 years of exciting work, making a lot of being motivated, making money, hopefully a lot of money, but also being able to innovate and help people. Because the way the world of software development is going is the way that we've envisioned back and that we are, again, ahead of time, protecting and supporting our customers through you guys in partnership. So, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here with us today. And this was the last time we saw each other, about 5 years ago, I think. And it's been a really, really long time. We figured out during these pandemic years that we really need to be together. It's great to be able to work everywhere and be remote and be flexible. But being together, it's really something else, isn't it? And so I think this conference is shaping up to be an amazing one. I'm very, very happy to be in this setting here in Lisbon. And yeah, let's kick at it. Let's move forward. So first thing I wanted to talk about is what's been happening at OutSystems, especially in what relates to the developer community. We've added 100,000 new members in the past 12 months. And out of this 100,000 is because we keep on growing the install base, but we've added close to 500 new customers during the past year. But it's not only these 500 new customers, it's the fact that these 500 new customers have produced about 4,000 new projects in the community. Now, when we add to the already very large ecosystem that we have, and we start counting all the projects, we are in the hundreds of thousands. But can you believe that what we've discovered is that these hundreds of thousands of projects are actually a very small drop in the amount of work that needs to be done. And so the future is going to be more productive. That's our belief. That's what we're betting our roadmaps. That's what we're betting a lot of the money we make. We put it back into research. We put it back into training. We put it back into the community. But also what we've been discovering is that companies around the world, as you'll see from Petronas, for instance, and from what Lisa is going to tell us, the amount of innovation that these companies demand, which are based on digital systems, is increasing exponentially. And so there seems to be an infinite pool of things to do. And as we increase productivity, we need more of you, honestly. And so please keep going, invite your friends, and thank you very much. But this is the work we're doing, and we intend to accelerate it. 470 customers, and the year that's approaching, 2024, it's a great, great year. So let me tell you a little bit why we find ourselves in this situation today. And a lot of you have heard some of these stories in the past, and so I apologize for repeating some of them, but some of you probably have never seen really the OutSystems story as depicted in terms of our cross-core innovations, which fundamentally gives us a little bit of legitimacy to be able to talk about what's coming next. And so back in 2000, we fundamentally predicted that was our thought, that in about 5 years, 30% systems would migrate out of the data center. And that's why we call the company OutSystems. So in 2002, while everyone was fighting, there was fighting projects that were late, there was this little thing coming up in this, from a group of crazy people that created this manifest called Agile. And we called all platforms at the time Agile platform. Because what we've realized by working with our customers is that everyone using our platform was moving very quickly into iterative development. Agile today is just part of mainstream, but remember, at the time, we had to fight people who said, we'll never do an Agile project here. We build software as we build bridges, profoundly, in 5 years or 20 years, and robustly. And then, of course, that's not how things happen. And today, we build everything as extreme prototyping, trying things, improving constantly, and it never ends. In 2002, we had the first glimpse that we had to connect operations with development. We were looking into the problem. We were looking into a specific problem. And the problem was that we started realizing that in order for you to be productive, it's not about that first burst of project development. It's really about what you do if you start going in cycles, or if you move into releasing the first version, what comes after? And what comes after is change requests, is changes into UX, changes into data systems, changes into integrations, into the processes. And so when we started realizing that a lot of the friction was because the development groups were separated from the operations group, and there was almost like a gap in the middle, we introduced in our platform a full and the first version of what is today called DevOps. And I still remember, for us it was obvious. We double-click, we moved the thing across stages, and it went into production. But that thing was so radically new that people started doing change requests in 5 minutes across these pipelines. And today, they have evolved to become continuous integration and continuous delivery. But you've probably seen that for the first time here at OutSystems. And in 2011, when a couple of years, I think it was right after Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, and we started seeing the growth of the iPhone, and in corporations, bring your own device. What we realize is, my God, this thing produces a window where a human can interact with the digital system in real time. And so, instead of a nurse going to a computer, printing the list of drugs that he needs to prescribe to the ward, she can take an iPad, she can take a phone, or, in this today world, he can take an iPad and he can take a phone and go down the ward, and as the drugs are prescribed, he can click on it. That thing in real time updates the database that fundamentally of the database of the ERP. That immediacy, that's what surprised us. That's what gave us the vision that, my God, we need to do something about this, because this is going to change the way systems are done. And we still believe that the amount of mobile devices and communication in real time that today's process use inside corporations is completely understated and underserved. And you guys will see, this is one of our big bets for the future, continues to be the way we approach the device towards the human, so that that communication and interaction can be done in real time. But in the platform, back in 2011, that's when we were the first platform of this kind to release full support for mobile. And then finally, is the amount of customers. I think we had for about 400 customers when the calls into Gartner and Forrester started coming in. What do you think about OutSystems? What do you think about this type of thing? And the analysts didn't even understand what this product was. And so there was tons of interesting stories about the name they wanted. Some wanted Rapid Application Development and Deployment, RAD2 or RAD Square. Gartner called it High Productivity Platform as a Service, a mouthful that was never very easy to pronounce. And then Forrester came up with low-code. And after 3 years, low-code became adopted by everyone. And today is a category that's growing at about 25% per year. And it's fundamentally done because we, together with a couple of other vendors, but fundamentally OutSystems, push this notion that building software productively inside organizations increases the innovation level and the competitive level of these organizations. And that's why we have low-code today. Now, in 2018, we went back to our roots and said, if there is automation, we started looking into the advances in machine learning, and we thought we need to understand what's going on. And so we created this project internally at the company called Project Turing. We invited a bunch of really smart people, and we told them, is there a way for you guys to look into the development cycle, both development, both testing, deployment, operations, performance monitoring, the feedback cycle? Is there a way for us to compress, remove toil, and have some more of automation, remove a lot of boring work from developers? And that's when we started working on. The reason why today we were able to release so many products, and they're kind of almost like old news, is because we've started very, very early looking into what AI could do for us. We're going to talk more about this, but what it really helped us, it's what helped everyone, was the explosive change into large language models and what they can do for us. And we were ready as a company to embrace that disruptive, stepwise innovation that has been happening in the past 8 months. So back now, in 2023, it's a time where we're reflecting what we think is going to be the future. What is the next thing? Is it going to take 2 years? It's going to take 3. It's very difficult to predict timing. Actually, we failed timing because we always thought things were going to come faster than they did. Okay, we thought the world moved faster, but the world is moving faster, actually. So the future is approaching us at a much faster clip rate than it used to do. So there's a bunch of stuff we're thinking about. I'm going to select 3 to talk to you about, which are important in some of the decisions we're making. One of them is this notion of Agile Cloud. What does this mean? This is the 90s, the end of the 90s. That's when I've started my career in 88. 88. Probably some of you guys were not born at that time. So this is for people, and you know who you are, because I know you guys, that have white hair or no hair, okay? And so what we have here is the landscape of digital systems at the time. Big installations of ERPs, CRM, HR systems, core systems, a lot of SAP, a lot of Siebel, if someone still remembers that name. And so this was the time, and it was complemented by a lot of Excel and a lot of email. That was the digital landscape at the time. And then the cloud came. Wow. 2000, first company that released a cloud product was in '94, a small company from Bose, Montana, which all the Americans go crazy when I tell this story. But I remember it was the first browser-based SaaS system that I've ever seen. And then it started picking up, helped by Salesforce success. And today we have tens of thousands of these systems and vendors being sold. And actually what's funny is that in this past year, the number of average systems that an organization of more than 1 billion have installed inside, remember, in the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, the organization that had the most systems was a telco, was telecommunication companies, and they had about 80 systems, which was like immense. Billing systems, CRMs, systems to control antennas, systems to do prepays, you know, all of that. Very large number of systems. Today, the average company of 100 million, 200 million has 270 SaaS on average. We are one of them, unfortunately. A company of more than 1 billion surpasses hundreds and hundreds of software as a service systems. And so what has happened is that this collection of vendors, all jostling for a little piece of white space, are selling these small use cases that overlap each other. creating a tremendous amount of redundancy, a tremendous amount of data that's replicated everywhere in different stages of validity, tremendous amount of integrations, and the problem of distributed systems that we've never seen before. And so today, the SaaS sprawl is a problem almost as big as what we've seen in the end of the 90s with the customization of big systems like SAP and the likes. And so what we've seen in the past 10 to 12 years is the emergence of this notion of a composite architectures. It started with microservices and the notion that you have to build and adjust the part that you want in your organization to exactly the use case and the functionality that you need. And so it's not going back to the big monolith, all connected, that's very difficult to change, but it's breaking the problem in such a small parts that those parts can evolve independently, and whenever we have a change, we actually can evolve that part very quickly, or we can take the part and replace it by other. And that notion of agility is what supports this notion of composability of apps and services. And that has become a heartbringer for OutSystems. Actually, you know this. If you guys looked into one of the few breaking changes we've done as we've built the new version of the OutSystems platform was because we transformed the notion of module into the notion of a loosely coupled application. Why? Because we believe that composability is a crucial aspect of performing, of giving the default of agility. And so this notion of agility has become a fundamental driver for us to build our product roadmap and continue to innovate. Now, this notion of should I buy something from a vendor, should I rent it in these days, or should I build it myself, and should I control the roadmap? This notion of buy versus build, it's okay. It's actually what we defend. But what we've been finding over and over and over is that as we compress productivity in the things that you build, it gives you the possibility of increasing the surface of red squares and removing white squares that are end of life or are becoming too stiff to be customized. The trade-off here is really, what is the economics of build? How fast can you make a change, and how fast can you build something? And what we predict in the future is that the amount of red squares are going to increase. Now, if they are going to increase, we need more of you guys. We need you guys to be extremely productive, because this backlog is going to increase. And so, did you guys make a good career choice? Yes, you did. Because not only the demand is going to increase here, but every type of development that today you have several alternatives to build those composites, either it's apps, either it's back-end services. Today we have traditional languages, we have multiple tools, no-code tools, we have low-code tools and we have high-performance low-code platforms like OutSystems. But what we believe, what we see as the evolution of Gen AI percolates into code generation, every platform in the future is going to be a low-code platform. Every developer, more than 80 to 90% of all software, will be developed based on a tool that's powered by automation. But because we know already that there's no free lunches, we know what are the trade-offs, where do we need to train our community, where do we need to empower our community, because not everything is going to be done fully automated. There's going to be tremendous amounts of work that require more detail, more complex, more architectural, more UX, more interactions, more technical work than we'll ever see. But it's going to be very difficult to do that when a bot is generating 100,000 lines of code in one go, and then you are asked to go and validate that code. That's not going to be done. It's going to be done by another bot that's going to validate what the first bot did. And so it's going to be a bunch of bots talking with each other, and you guys looking in the middle, trying to understand, what is this code? What does it do? Is it compliant? Is it secure? Or do we have Terminator number 7 coming in? Okay? So this is the problem of low-code platforms, is you create these abstractions, the code becomes transparent underneath a lot of this low-level code, and so you have to transform that into a way that you give control back to the developer. How do you do that? That's exactly what we have been doing. And that's what we will continue to do, because we have an edge, we understand how this is going, and we have all these years of experience to go on. So congratulations to you. You have made a very good career choice. Thank you. I also did a good career choice, so thanks to myself. Okay, anyway, so great example. Today is the day of energy companies, and so we have two of the most exciting organizations in our install base. This one is Petrobras, is the largest, actually it's the largest company in Brazil, and it's an energy company. They do exploration of oil and gas. They've decided, this is an interesting case, because when you compare it with Petronas, which we'll have at the end of this keynote, while Petronas went for trying to get the huge backlog they have at the edge of the organization, Petrobras had a much tougher problem. They actually had hundreds of applications. They actually have about more than 1,200 applications that are end of life. These were built in COBOL, these were built in Java. Yeah, Java is end of life these days. And they need to be ported so that they can be transformed into smaller parts that can be changed very quickly. And so they went through a radical program of written. They have issued a lot of services engagements, very, very large services engagements, to get to assemble an extremely large number of teams. They've started with 16 macro agile teams broken in pods, and they have started to develop, to have a first wave of 300 mission-critical applications being rewritten. So this is a typical case that we see more and more of very large organizations looking at the install base and thinking, this is it. We need to change this. It's no longer lift and shift and put it in the cloud. We have to rewrite these things. Otherwise, they're stifling our innovation. So high-performance low-code, it's all about, for us, we understand how to solve the small problems. It's not that difficult to solve a workflow of 2 steps or a little screen on top of an Excel table. That's relatively easy to do, okay? What is difficult to do is to actually apply this type of techniques, these abstractions, for very, very complex problems, like loans origination, claims processing, mobile applications that serve 300 million users, like we have some customers who want to do, that cover a very large portion of the planet. And so, for instance, the OutSystems Developer Cloud, one of the targets was to cover 1/7 of the world population. And so it's what we called internally the 1 billion cloud. Today, we have close to about 50 million users using actively the platform, but as we see more of these portals and these mobile apps spreading and supporting by a highly scalable architecture, this number of users is growing exponentially. And so we plan to hit 1 billion users very, very soon. So what is this Why is this difficult? Because that speed and agility, which is something that we don't give up on, needs to be coupled with this notion of security, compliance, and scalability, performance, resilience. And so a lot of what you guys are going to see in the product keynote, which is fantastic, is a lot of demonstrations of a lot of experience that you guys are already familiar, because you use Service Studio, because you've been building apps. But now you're going to see how we did that under the cover by showing you the architecture of what was built in Odyssey and why it's so different from why we had to do such a radical step when we moved out of O11, okay? So, full stack composability. This was the Agile cloud. This is what we believe. But we're taking this notion of composability further down the stack. It's no longer at the level of app, it's no longer at the level of services. It's really around other things that are important. Composability, breaking the problem in parts, has a lot of trade-offs, but it has one fundamental benefit, it's agility. And one of the things we've done with a partnership that we've done with a fantastic company called Ionic was the fact that we are now able to attack very large mission-critical mobile applications that can only be done by multiple teams. And this is done through the concept of super apps and micro front ends. And so, in order to explain what we're doing here, I would like to welcome on stage the Ionic team, Matt and Josh. Hey, Matt, Josh. All right. So, Matt.
So, super apps in general are about taking a portfolio of applications, right? Let's say B2E or B2C. But for B2E, maybe you have an application that allows employees to have time tracking built into it. Their perks system, right? They can give little kind of treats to their coworkers for thanking them for a good job. But you have all these things as separate applications. They're all installed differently. So an employee starts out on their first day, they might have to install 20 different applications on their phone, right? You have to manage as a development team the distribution of all these applications. Every time they need an update, you might have to update one, you might have to update 10 different ones. If you're changing a back-end API, it all gets very complicated, right? Super apps are about simplifying this whole thing, taking this and breaking them up into mini apps that are part of one parent application that you'll wind up installing on your device. An example of this is a company we work with called Mobile Mini. So Mobile Mini, you guys might have seen their storage solutions out and about. They came to us and said, we have 8 different internal applications that we all want to bring together and consolidate down to one. This has gotten too complicated for us to manage. So they consolidated that into a single application, put all these different features in the app, much like the features we just talked about. And they've gained so much productivity from doing this and making this more composable architecture that they're now going to expand this to 25 mini apps. Each of these mini apps is handled by its own team now. So these teams can all contribute to kind of this one parent application on their own release cadences, their own release cycles. So they can update these things whenever they want, independent from each other, even though it's one single binary installed on a device. Now the coolest thing about this is offline support is built into everything. So you might have kind of web content coming into this application, but it's still all on your phone. So if you're disconnected, you can do any of these things offline as well. And they did that through Portals. So Portals is a product that allows you to take any web developed content, any OutSystems low-code developed content, and put it into any other architecture as well. So it's about saying, hey, maybe you have an application that you've built in pure Swift for iOS, right? But you want to bring in OutSystems content, you want to bring in web content. Portals allows you to do that, but manage those deployment processes separately as well, so each team can contribute on their own cadence, on their own schedule, without breaking each other's code as well, because everything is still separate in these mini apps.
Why are people just building this thing in super apps instead of just releasing 25 apps into the App Store?
So I think it's about discoverability and maintainability, right? There's also features in these apps that are shared. So if you think about authentication, right?
Right.
You have 25 different applications. You now have 25 different engineering teams all programming the same authentication flow, wasting all of this time, doing something that effectively should be shared one time amongst all these applications. So by bringing it together, you can offload a lot of that development time with these tasks that are shared between everyone and allow those teams to concentrate just on their piece and what makes it special, the value they're providing to the end user.
But discoverability, you're very right, because one of the things that sometimes we don't really value is that just knowing what that URL is, what is that entry point into the app, it's a major, major issue. And people are so lazy. We are so lazy in general that, oh, I should go to that place and check where the URL is. I'm not.
Yeah.
And so that thing creates friction, and this thing, this putting together something that in a way it's built by separated teams provides the best of those both worlds.
Exactly.
And that you know, it's interesting because we talk with a lot of customers, and there's a debate between should this thing be a standalone app, should be integrated inside something bigger, like if it's internal, it's an intranet, if it's external, it's a brand app. But let me ask you something, Matt. You guys have been supporting some of the biggest organizations in the world, right? Can you give us some examples of things that use web technology that's powered by Ionic, but which no one will ever guess?
Yeah, so Mobile Mini is just one example. You have companies like Priceline. You have companies like Emirates. Emirates wanted to split out features of their application that weren't getting enough love.
We're talking about the airline.
The airline.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, they had features in their app that weren't getting enough love because the team of their application was focusing only on a few different really big pieces. So the seat selection, the menu selection, they weren't getting enough love. They wanted other teams to begin contributing to the application. So they used portals to make this architecture where a different team could contribute a mini app that was seat selection, that was the menu selection, so that those teams could iterate and launch new features and improve the experience a lot faster than that core team could manage.
And menu selection is mission critical.
Absolutely.
Especially in Portugal, where we only care about food. Okay. So what are we going to see here?
So Josh is going to show off a real demo of portals here working. So I think I'll let him just show that off, and I'll just interrupt you whenever I feel like it.
All right, Josh.
Sounds great.
Let's go.
So this is a demo application we built using portals to show how it can be used for super apps. And this demo is called Supernova. It's a B2E application meant for employees of an organization where they might do time tracking or request vacation or give accolades to coworkers. So as we log into this super app, we can see that there are 3 mini apps: human resources, people perks, and time tracking. And let's step into these applications. For human resources, we can see that I guess I don't want any time off because I haven't requested any yet, or I can request time off. For people perks, we can see a list of accolades or perks that have been given across the organization, or I can give a perk myself. Good job, Matt. And for time tracking, we can see that as I'm logged in as a contractor right now, I can create time entries of work that I've done. If I were logged into as a manager, I could see a list of time off or time tracking entries that I need to approve. Let's add one. And apparently that button doesn't work.
We got to fix that.
Yeah, but that's okay. We'll come back to it later and fix it. So this iOS application is built using Swift, which is the native language of most iOS apps.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So now, I want to talk a little bit about the demo that Josh gave already. So if you notice, the entire time, we went through these 3 applications, we loaded, we logged in. We didn't talk at all about kind of the technology or anything behind it as well. Every day we work with people much like yourselves who look at applications, mobile apps inside their businesses and want to contribute to those apps. You might have another app in your organization that you see moving too slowly, or that you say, hey, I have an idea for this feature, I'd love to turn this into a mini app and work on it better. This demo is how we find the most success inside people, organizations like yourself, saying, let me take a piece of an application. I'm going to build it in the technology stack that I love. I'm going to go show it to the CEO and say, hey, can you look at this and just tell me what you think? And you don't tell them what's native, what's Swift, what's React Native, what's OutSystems, what's web development.
What is this perk thing? That would be my question.
Yeah, how do I get the perks? Yeah. That allows you to kind of remove technology from the discussion and say, look, this is possible. This is a beautiful, performant experience that I've already shown you. We can allow these multiple teams to come together and contribute. It allows you to get through a lot of those barriers of kind of technology in the discussion and just show how you can contribute. So definitely worth thinking about doing the demo kind of without tech first, and then doing the deep dive.
Yeah, but let's talk about the tech. So this app, like I said, is built using Swift, but the super app itself is responsible for some things. It's responsible for authentication, authorization, identifying what mini apps a user should see. And it also has a few more tricks. So as I've authenticated to the super app, I've created a session, right? A session in a backend. But as I move into a mini app, I'm actually passing that session information behind the scenes to the web technology. So in this case, if I create a time off request, or I'm looking for the time off request, that data is being fetched using that session that we've created from the super app. Now, with these three applications, the mini apps themselves, human resources and time tracking were built using Ionic and React. And let's take a look at the code for that. So here you can see it's just a React application, but it's isolated. This code base in this repository is just for this singular application. It's not for the rest of the app. So as a developer, I make changes. I only worry about the code that I'm responsible for. And People Perks is a little different because it's built with OutSystems. Here you can see that looking at it in ODC Studio, we see it here, and then, yeah, I can give a perk. Now, one of the hallmarks of portals, though, is this ability to have this interaction between the native layer and the web layer, making for the seamless, singular experience. So although I've authenticated from the main application and passed that into human resources as a session, there's also one more piece of this that's really interesting. And that's the ability to move between. So this button at the top that says dashboard is actually built in JavaScript, and it's part of the mini app itself. But when I click this button, it's creating an event. And it's passing that event up to the native application. The native application listens for that event and then decides what to do with it. In this case, it's going to dismiss the mini app and have a native animation that takes you back to the main super app.
And this kind of love and care that Portals provides with things like those animations is what makes it seem like even though you're doing this mini app architecture, you can't really tell, right? As an end user downloaded on the device, it all just appears as one seamless thing to you and has the animations or the gesture support that you would come to expect as a mobile application user.
And I think one of the last things that's really interesting about Portals is the deployment mechanism. So I mentioned earlier that you're modifying code only for a single app, but remember how time tracking had a broken button? And I'll admit that was on purpose, but let's go ahead and fix that. And we're going to do a live deployment now on stage. So fingers crossed.
That wasn't obvious that it was a faked error.
So we can see that that button didn't work because I commented it out. So this is where I would do a commit and a build and a deployment, but I don't want you to have to sit through a build process because it's probably going to take too much time on this app.
Who wants to watch console logs?
But let's go ahead and do a deployment. So I already have a build here. We're going to deploy a live update. We're going to do it to the production channel, and let's deploy, and it's completed. So we're going to step out, step back in. Oh, didn't give it enough time. Oh, that's because I didn't log out. And there we see it. So it's fixed. So in 1 minute's time, I identified a bug, I made the code change, I fixed it, I deployed, and I did so not only because it was easy to change the code, because I did so with confidence, knowing that the code that I changed affected my repository and my deployment affected no other code on device except for the application that I'm responsible for.
So all the other teams did not have to worry that you did a deployment randomly on stage live.
Exactly. Now, typically you might have like a workflow in place where you have reviews, but they don't have to review the entire application anymore. They just have to review that singular app that you're responsible for.
Perfect.
Thank you. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Josh. Now, a lot of people have asked us, why did we choose Ionic? Why did we merge with Ionic as a single company? And the one reason is because of what I've been telling you. We strongly believe that mobile is being completely understated, underrated, okay, as a fundamental technology to really create innovative solutions. What these guys is they are experts in high performance, high scale mobile applications. A lot of the technology we use inside ODC, inside O11, is actually based on Ionic technology. And so what you guys have seen here, which is part of their move towards that composability, fits right into our vision of how to integrate these things and actually put web technology at such a level that it allows us to change things in very, very compressed change times, like the ones you see with this technology. And so a lot of the work we've been doing is merging the Ionic technology into the OutSystems platform and giving options and capabilities to developers, not only to build the front ends, but also to do the rest that OutSystems does so well, which is to build everything else between integrations, repositories, backends, and all with utmost scale and utmost scalability. So it's a great team we got. It's a single company. We like to still call everyone Ionic, like we like to call everyone OutSystems. But this is our companies coming together towards one single unified vision. We're very, very, very happy with what we did here. So congratulations to these guys. And let's move on because there's a lot of mobile coming into the future. I wanted to move quickly into this notion of Gen AI. And we've been assembling every month. We got some new use cases. We're starting to see the first ha-ha moments. This is not as good as I thought. That's okay. It's always like that. There is a moment of euphoria with these technologies, and then people start realizing that there's a lot of details and a lot of work involving getting these things to work. And so we've been doing this already for a long time, and so we've bumped into a lot of the issues that are unrelated to large language models, but are related to machine learning in general. And so it's not only around this type of use processes, but there are things that these technologies really, really work very well. And so in the next couple of months, we are going to announce a really cool set of technologies, things we're doing internally, things we're doing with customers, as we are increasingly speeding up the deployment of some of these Gen AI models into particular use cases that are fundamentally changing the fabric of how certain type of functions are done inside the enterprise. Mostly removing toil, removing work that no one likes to do. That has been a fundamental characteristic of these first use cases. A lot of it is done through these connectors. We have done a really important connector, which is this integration with the OpenAI connector. And It's not very new to you guys, but I would like to welcome John Ferguson, our VP of Solution Architects, on stage to show you a quick demo on how a particular use of the connectivity of OutSystems with OpenAI. John?
Good morning, everyone. Wow, there's a lot of people here.
Yes.
I'm really excited to share with you some of the things that we've been doing inside of OutSystems to make it easier for you to consume AI and consume technologies like OpenAI. First, I want to start with a scenario. Imagine yourself as a home insurance agent. I know it's a difficult thing to do, I understand. But imagine that you are on the phone and you're talking with somebody who wants to buy home insurance. And as you do that, and you work through and you spend all of your time, they come back to you at the very end and they say, actually, you know what? I got a really better quote from a competitor. And so you're sitting there and you say, all right, well, let me look in my insurance portal, my agent portal, and see if I can do something about that. Oh, there's a nice compare button. And I open it up and it says, please email competitive@homeinsurance.com. This is about as far from real time as we can possibly get. But we are here at the ONE conference, so there's one thing that we can do. We can build apps, and we can change that, and that's what we're going to do here today. And we're going to leverage OpenAI to turn this from a non-real-time example into a real-time example. So let's bring ourselves into ODC Studio. ODC Studio, for those who haven't had a chance to use it yet, is going to feel very similar to Service Studio. It has your processes, your interface, your logic, and your data. So let's actually look at an application here, this home insurance agent portal. First off, let's get rid of this, please email competitive@homeinsurance.com. The thing we first want to do is go get some information from the data store. Now, you're going to be very familiar with this. We'll bring over an aggregate. And one feature you may or may not be familiar with that we released late last year is actually the ability to get data based upon natural language. Now, underneath the covers, what we're doing is using a large language model to interpret your prompt, your question here, to then generate an aggregate. Now, is this amazing thing? There's a lot of work under the covers that does this. No, but it does help eliminate some of that toil of having to create a lot of these different pieces. Now, at the same time, we want to be able to take that policy data and turn it into text. Because ultimately, what we want to be able to do is merge information into a prompt that we can send over to OpenAI. So I'm going to search. There's a get text for policy function. And OutSystems is going to suggest to me, hey, would you like to set that data to your output? That sounds like a very logical idea. So I'll do a little cleanup here to make sure these are named well. We'll call this get policy. We'll call this get policy.
I can see you guys do this every day.
We'll call this data. OK, good. So now, really what we want to be able to do is take a PDF of that competitor quote, upload it, and extract the text out of that to, again, do the ultimate thing, which is create a prompt that we can send over to OpenAI. Now, one thing that, as a developer, I've always hated doing in traditional code is building an upload form. If you've ever had to do multi-part HTTP and manage the headers and all of those things, I feel your pain. Thankfully, OutSystems makes that a lot easier. So I make a couple of quick choices, and I'm going to create a client action that actually takes this uploaded file and turns it into text and sends it over to OpenAI. First, I'll call getText. Now, getText is a very unassuming function, but underneath the covers, what we're actually doing is executing external code. And this is an amazing thing that we've thought about, is how do we execute external code within OutSystems Developer Cloud? We're taking advantage of the governance and all of the security features of ODC to execute this actually on top of a serverless framework that allows us to scale out in a really dramatic way. Now, thankfully, you as developers and myself don't have to worry about how that's done. But what I do know is that OutSystems is making that promise of it being secure, of it being governed, so we don't have runaway code. And that's always been a power of OutSystems, is to provide that not just for the apps you build in Service Studio or here, ODC Studio, but in the external code that you run as a part of this execution. Now, what we want to be able to do is stream this over to OpenAI. So the first thing, again, back to the security concept, we need to actually tell OpenAI who is going to do this so we have control and audit. We're going to actually tell this little server action, hey, stream the data back to the UI. And now we're going to do the thing that everyone hopes I can do correctly, is actually create the prompt. Now, what you probably are familiar with if you started doing actual generative AI work is that prompts are a little bit of an art form. We're getting better at it, and we're applying maybe some more science versus art form as we go. But this is something that we see a lot of folks working with and getting really good at being able to generate the right prompt, the right question to ask a generative AI system. So we're going to ask it, can you compare the policies of Neo policy and competitor policy in bullets and provide a recommendation? Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to bring in that Neo policy.
So if there is a mistake, you guys can point it out.
But this is the function that we just wrote earlier that apparently I had a really hard time renaming. It's fine. I'll work on this later, I promise. We're also going to bring in that competitors policy.
Josh, we had to learn how to use a Portuguese keyboard.
We did. So for folks who don't know, based on my accent, I'm from the US. If you couldn't figure that out, well, there we go. So
you couldn't find the plus sign.
It's actually true. Isn't that sad? I'm like, I feel like I'm back in my first computer class. Where is that plus sign? So what we've done here is we've used natural language to go and get the policy data. We've used a function to take that and turn it into text. We've also used an external code to go and extract text out of a PDF that's been provided to us. We composed a prompt based on those 2 points of data, and now we're going to send that prompt over actually to OpenAI in order to get back the results, a recommendation and a summarization. So that ultimately we go back to the business use, which is, I don't want to have to email competitive@homeinsurance.com. I want to be able to truly compare this quote in real time. So our app's been published. We're going to select this insurance file that's been given to us. And if I've done everything right, we'll start to get some data back from OpenAI. It works! So thankfully what it says is the Neo policy is actually better, and now I can actually on the phone make a response in real time. But the power of OutSystems is in our ability to consume what is in the ecosystem. OpenAI is an amazing technology. Now with this connector, we're able to do that, and we're able to, live in front of all of you, actually build a real integrated system. I think that's pretty cool.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Thanks, everybody.
So this is a very small example. There's tons of technologies that are popping up every day. And one of the things we've realized our customers are asking us is there a way for you guys to do more work in terms of accelerating a lot of the usage of these things? Because it takes a fair amount of time. There's tons of startups very actively trying to build composites of a lot of tools. There's new names coming, all like Pinecone and vectorization, chunking, and as always, there's an explosion of technologies, an explosion of complexity, and we're doing a lot of work to, again, make things simpler, make able for you guys to use these new models, these excellent, a lot of these open source stuff, a lot of these vendors that are becoming more known in a way that you can deploy very quickly in the space of 1 week, in the space of days, these highly, highly effective Gen AI models. So let me get this, let's just revise the way we've been using AI and what is coming, really. I'm not going to talk about specific things. We have changed our way of announcing products, and I'm going to probably talk a little bit about that later on, or the guys at the product keynote are going to talk about that. But we have this particular collection of products called the Mentor ecosystem, where we have things for development. There's a lot of research going on the development side of things, and things for maintenance of the life cycle and governance. And so this is what we call the Mentor system. Especially on this right, there's a bunch of little tools that will come up in the next basically 16 months, very staggered, that will dramatically help a lot of the governance processes that we see in relatively large organizations. But the one thing we wanted to talk about is this notion that people look into Gen AI applied to code as a way to replace everything. And again, what we believe is that Gen AI has always been one tool, one type of technology that needs to be wrapped into a vision that fundamentally has at its core producing mission-critical, business-critical software at very, very, very short amounts of time. And it doesn't really matter how you get there, because the amount of obstacles and challenges that exist in the way, there are very many. It's a very, very complex problem. And it's complex because the details are immense. And if one or two of those core details fail, the whole approach fails. And so we believe that the future has fundamentally low code, and there's a lot of generative AI that's going to power a lot of these things. And again, I think it's not low code will definitely, as a category, not disappear, but everything will look like low-code platforms, even if the approach is different. And so we know that is the case, so we're bracing ourselves to come up at the top, to come up as a winner like we've always been, #1. So what I wanted to show you is a project that we started about 2 years ago that was fundamentally only possible because of the developments we see in a lot of in these neural networks, the transformer architecture of these neural networks, and machine learning. What we didn't expect was the step that was able to be done with large language models and the tokenization of inputs and a lot of the technologies that today are evolving almost every 2 weeks. So what you guys are going to see here is our current big project on changing and enhancing the development experience by using a lot of generative AI into the mix. So what are our goals? We looked into projects. There are projects today. We have customers that are looking at a 6-year project of about $500 million. Okay? I'm not going to tell you what customer is this, but they have several of these applications. And if we go around the world, there's like a gigantic amount of workloads that need to be rewritten, need to be agilized. And so we don't think this is possible. We did the calculations. It's not possible. Even if you guys are 100 times more in terms of the community, this is not possible to do, even with the OutSystems community at full speed. It's not possible to do with all the developers in the world. And so we have to look into 2 orders of magnitude of productivity. So when we put this goal in front of us, 2 orders of magnitude, what we thought is we need to look into this from a completely different way. And so part of this is that the iteration process needs to be so fast that there is almost no latency in waiting for every type of change. And we also needed to be able to staff and restaff and augment and change and do a much, much easier labor arbitrage so that a group of people would not have to be stuck maintaining a project. They could be moved very quickly because the training and absorption of a new system can be done very, very quickly. And so these are the 3 drivers that we came and we put ourselves as goals for this project. And what came up was a vision for an environment which we call Morpheus that will have multiple tools. And what we're going to do here is demonstrate a very early version of these systems. We are way ahead of this, but we're going to show something a little bit earlier so that you guys don't know everything that we know. Okay, so without further ado, John, can you please just give us a quick run?
Everyone's wondering why is this guy still on stage? It's because I like being up here. Sorry. What I want to share with you here is, as Paulo said, we want to make it so that generative AI can be applied to the software development lifecycle. And our first stop on that journey is, how do we make it easier for people to maybe come with an idea, or not even come with an idea, just have the blank canvas in front of them and start building a piece of software. Now, this is what we call our app generator. It's the first sort of entry point into Project Morpheus. You can see there's a number of application, almost starters here, or ideas: inventory control system, retail analytics. These are applications that have been built based on the context of this particular instance of Morpheus, as well as the learnings that we've had and the large language models that we've built internally based on our experience as OutSystems. These are not public applications. This is really within your own context. Now, what I want to be able to do, if I search for things like inventory, and get me this app, it's going to look across both applications that have already been created, again, ones within your context of Morpheus, and also other ideas that we've had based on our learnings and the data models that you are providing. That's the big thing we want to stress here. This is not some generic thing that's collecting the internet and sharing all of that. That is the domain of a lot of generative AI. This is applied generative AI. It is your context. One thing that's really interesting here is that when we click this generate, it's back to this idea of a prompt. And so we're giving you the base prompt based upon that model that you've provided in our learnings. But you can change that prompt. You can add other types of concepts and entities. You can even add workflows based upon these names. You can see here in this one for a stock control software, purchase orders also has a workflow of draft and sent and received. This is a really different way of articulating that's actually a lot closer to the business case that we're trying to solve. Now, if I click generate, it's going to take about 5 minutes, and you really don't want me to riff for 5 minutes and fill this room with hot air. Trust me. So let's instead actually look at what happens when we generate an application. This is what we call the app editor today within Morpheus. And this particular example is a sales dashboard. You can see some of the core concepts: opportunities, leads. It actually has a dashboard, as the name is implied. This was generated from a model that was provided, that's just like your own internal data model, and our large language models that we've been learning about application patterns in different types of apps. Now, what I want to do here is help sort of solve that blank canvas problem. This app looks great, and in fact, any app that is generated by Morpheus is always ready to go to production. It is in a stable state. You don't have to make changes to it. It's always ready to be deployed. But I've actually clicked over here and said, hey, Morpheus, what can I do next? And Morpheus makes some suggestions: products and services, accounts. It even offers up workflow suggestions based upon the entity model and our learnings. But I'm going to pick accounts because it's a sales dashboard. I kind of need this accounts concept. And so what's going to happen is it's going to build out those screens. It may make some modifications to a data model to support those screens. And something really amazing is it's going to change other screens that already exist. If you've ever done scaffolding within OutSystems, this is taking it to a whole new level. So now I've added this accounts concept. You can see I have an accounts list and details. But I just heard from our sales team that they feel like they don't have enough information on opportunities when they look at the opportunities list. So what I instead want to be able to do is actually look at what are some layouts that Morpheus can suggest to me on how I can change the layout of this application, of this particular screen. Now you can see we have some really interesting alternatives, some boxes, but I've worked with salespeople a lot. They really like their tabular data. And so as I look at this option here, I see it actually has some more information. So I'm going to choose use this layout. And what's happening now is that that data model is being resurfaced in the screen. It's changing how some of it's laid out. But everything looks the same. So I want to be able to highlight some information here that might be useful, but I'm not sure what I really want to do. So instead, I can ask Morpheus, hey, give me some interesting conditions or ways that I can look at the data. And Morpheus comes back and says, all right, well, based upon the model and based upon the data that's there, maybe you want to highlight an opportunity if the score is higher than 80. Or maybe you want to highlight an opportunity if the amount is greater than 100,000. I've worked with sales. They care about the dollars. They care about the euros. That's what matters, right? And so I've clicked this. The modifications have been made. The CSS has been changed. And now my opportunity page has more information, and it's highlighted in a nice way. This is great. So I've added a new concept of accounts. I've changed the opportunities layout. But I just got a call from our CRO. Apparently, my CRO calls me and said, hey, we want to do stuff with industry. I said, do you have any more detail about what that means? No, industry. Okay. Well, thankfully, I have my good friend Morpheus. So I can give Morpheus a small prompt here, industry, and Morpheus comes back and says, all right, well, I know your data. Win rate or accounts? Oh, actually, win rate sounds great. No problem. I see that you're on a dashboard type thing, and I'm going to create a chart for you that actually has industry data on it, ready to go and ready to rock. Now, this wouldn't be a great OutSystems demo if we didn't actually publish the application. So I've clicked publish, and what Morpheus is going to do is do that same thing that we are super familiar with. One-click publish. Go through the deployment process, aggregate the assets together, go through the compilation, all of those things under the covers that we know so well, but it's an application from Morpheus. I also want to stress something really, really important here. This is a way for me as a developer to move faster, to take away some of the toil, to take away some of that undifferentiated heavy lifting. But as our application comes up, what you're going to see is that I can get a lot done with Morpheus. And I can actually make lots of changes, whether that's adding a new accounts object, or adding a new change to the opportunities layout, or even adding a whole dashboard with a new chart. And what we can see is that this is a real running application. That's amazing. That's pretty cool. But I want to share one last thing before Paulo kicks me off this stage, which is OutSystems has always had a no walls, no rules type of perspective. We want to make sure that we provide the capabilities to build all of the things that you need to build. And so when you work at that Morpheus layer, it is a higher layer of abstraction. And always within OutSystems, we've been able to break down that barrier, to run external code, to run traditional code type things, when we needed that extra layer down. The same is true here. As a developer, those skills that I have developed still apply because this is an OutSystems application. It's in ODC Studio. And I can make changes here that then get reflected in Morpheus. I can make changes in Morpheus that get reflected down here. And so my experience as a developer is now accelerated. I have another tool in the toolbox. And that's the power of OutSystems, is to give you the capability to solve the problems that you need to solve at the layer of abstraction that makes the most sense. I think that's pretty cool.
I just wanted to finish with a couple of things, which is, when we looked into this, we saw that this is only possible when you can have technologies like GenAI that are powered, that have large learning sets. And so for the guys who understand a little bit how these things work, we have more than 10 million graphs of applications that are feeding into these models and are teaching these models on how to make these type of suggestions. The suggestions are based on publicly available data in terms of what are the typical data entities that companies use, what are the typical type of screens and interactions that are used in particular type of functions, horizontal functions and industries. But it's also based a lot on the type of directions and intents that are created in terms of your COEs, in terms of the applications that you've already built. These are systems that have a lot of very fast reinforced learning so that we can create those suggestions based on the things that you build and that you encourage. The other thing that's extremely important is we know that the last mile is a very important portion of the development journey. And so we want to remove that blank canvas thing. Whenever someone asks you, hey, go and build me something, you want to get going very quickly. But you guys know that the devil is in the details. Is when they start coming with very specific change requests that now go, oh my God, now I need to change the architecture. Now I need to go and change the screens. It's going to take me several hours. Well, our objective is that those type of change requests allow you to do the things that are boring very quickly, but give you the creativity and the expansion for you to actually build new stuff that you believe is going to be differentiated. Okay? And so there's a lot of issues in front of us as we look into applying this type of model. But we've already fast forward a little bit into the future, and we believe this type of approach will completely disrupt the software development industry, because we know it's possible with the combination of these tools and what we have been doing to really, really change the way the world builds software. And that's why we're pretty excited inside OutSystems, and I hope that you guys come with us into this journey and help us basically just change the world. All right? Thank you. And so, to end at the high note, I would like to welcome on stage a fantastic champion of OutSystems, a tremendous leader of software engineering and DevOps organizations in one of the largest organizations in the world, Petronas, which you might know because they appear in every Mercedes F1 car. And so, without further ado, I would like to welcome on board Lisa Chan. Lisa, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Lisa, you have such a nice shirt, much better than mine. All right. Lisa, what did you think of Morpheus?
Oh, it's great. I'm not sure if you remember, but when you visited us in KL, I was collecting questions and requests from the community that they wanted to ask you, and more than half of it was about AI. It's like, when is he releasing AI features? What is he releasing? I don't care what he's releasing. Can we get early access to the program? So honestly, I think it's going to really delight and excite a lot of developers. And it's going to cut the friction and learning curve of our citizen developers as well. Yeah. So I think it's really exciting.
Now, you guys have have a citizen developer program that's probably one of the most sophisticated we've ever seen. Not only in terms of our customer base, but worldwide. Can you explain a little bit what is the operating model that you've been using?
Well, with the citizen developers, I saw this quote the other day that I really like. It's, before the truth can set you free, you have to identify the lie that's holding you back. And I think the lie that we were telling ourselves was that IT can fulfill the technology needs of the whole enterprise. And the truth is, I think it's not just mobile, that there are a lot of productivity use cases that we suppress, right? There's such a long queue of work that we have to deal with, that whenever there are small systems or systems that only have like 10, 20 users, tiny workflow, they either get rejected or they get suppressed or they get pushed to the back of the line, and IT almost never gets to them. So there's, I think, a very big underserved community of business users that want to automate their work, but they're never a priority for us to get to. So we're waiting. So we actually launched the Citizen Developer Program to meet that need.
But you've, so how are you using OutSystems in this process? I know you have a very sophisticated, almost like ring model of levels of certification of a competence. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Citizen Developer Program, I mean, in essence, it's a learning program. We have three levels. So anyone that signs up, and any of the 50,000 employees we have can sign up to the program. We put you through learning. You learn about environments, deployments, how do you use Service Studio, and when you hit level 3, we give you your own environment, and you can do whatever it is you like on it. We built sort of like a portal for us to put in some guardrails so that we can see what people are actually building, keep an eye on technical debt. But more or less, if you have a citizen developer app, we don't even stand in the way of deployment. So you can deploy your own apps. It's fully self-service.
Yeah. You saw the explosion of custom development inside Petronas, right? What was the size of your team originally?
Originally,
in terms of developers?
This was about 7 or 8 years ago. It was about 60 people. And I think at the time we were experiencing a shift. I mean, a lot like what you described. Most of IT was concerned with supporting, maintaining, configuring, enhancing core systems, right? ERP systems. But then there was a shift in preferences for like hyper-personalized apps, bespoke apps, and design, UI. So a lot of our users started prioritizing that. So there was a lot more preference to custom development. So the team has grown to like 200 now. And that's just our internal developers. That's not counting all the external offshore developers that we use as well.
What is the ratio between internal and external?
At the moment, it's about 80% external on most product teams.
Yeah. So we've seen several of these citizen development programs being deployed. I think you guys have done something that's very sophisticated because you've isolated the types of things that they want to do. You even built like small tools that accelerate that, a little bit like Morpheus did in a way using our APIs. But what happens when one of these apps grows into a point where the citizen developer can no longer maintain it? What is the process there? What do you guys do?
Yeah, it's what kept us up at night, honestly, when we first launched the Citizen Developer Program. I mean, we live in constant fear that there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of apps with spaghetti code that we eventually have to support and maintain, right? So The adoption right now is maybe 2,000. We're hoping to get to 2,000 by the end of the year for citizen developers. So we're quite early in the program. We only launched it at the end of last year.
And your goal is how many citizen developers?
Oh, by next year, maybe 5,000, and the year after that, 10,000. And I really want to get to a point, we have about 50,000 employees. I really want to get to a point where the majority of the company is comfortable doing some form of citizen development. Right? So, but I think it's just a process of watching when the apps become too complicated, because right now, citizen development helps when they are using existing apps, where they hit a wall. Let's say with SharePoint or Power Apps, right? And they're not happy with the UI, they can't do role-based access control, they can't do some basic CRUD stuff, so then they move to citizen development. But then it comes to a point where there are hundreds of users. They worry about security, the data lineage, and things like that. And that's where IT steps in. So we start asking them, where do you see this app going? What's the product roadmap? You know, shall we work together to support this? So I think there's a graduation process for some apps, not most apps, I think, but for maybe 20, 30% of that,
Correct.
that may actually funnel into being an IT project.
It's funny because the statistics we have in citizen development programs is that typically 1 out of 5, which is the 20% that you're describing, they graduate to become mission critical apps. And this is a problem that has been like this since Microsoft Access, Visual Basic, SharePoint, and all of this. It all, surprisingly, all my Microsoft technologies. But also Lotus Notes. I mean, we saw that type of gap into Lotus Notes. Where do you have any insight on where does that wall resides into? Is it UX? Is it integration? Is it compliance? Where is it? When do these applications graduate into becoming real ones?
You know, actually, I think the side benefit of the Citizen Developer Program has been to teach our business users about software development, because we're not a tech company, so our core product is not technology. So at best, our employees only have a fuzzy understanding of how software is made. So I don't think it hits a wall with those things specifically, but when it comes to a point where they have to receive tickets, service requests, where people start calling them, why is your app down? I can't, you know, the latency. So it gets to a point where they realize that, oh, I can no longer support this on my own. I can't keep up with the feature requests. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah, where they hit the wall.
These developers love to get support calls.
Yeah. Do you?
Right, guys? It's like one of those things everyone loves. But that's an extremely good point. You talk a little bit about data lineage, and there's a huge amount, there's an explosion of people talking about data, there's explosion of data, security of data, a lot of ransomware threats and all of that. How do you see that being, do you guys have any idea on how to do that between what IT does and what the citizen developer does?
We have some questions. We actually built a product. It's like an abstraction on top of Service Center and Lifeline, so it allows us to deploy and see all the requests that are incoming. And we asked that citizen developers classify their data. Are you working with sensitive data? This is the definition of sensitive data. If you are, you know, you should do this. You should put it in a different environment. So it's a guided process, but typically we recommend citizen developers don't develop apps where sensitive data is involved.
Okay. So there is a categorization that's done by the data architects and...
Well, it's done by the citizen developers themselves to begin with, and then it's validated.
And then it's validated.
By the COE, yeah.
So a lot of the processes that you guys do, these are extremely interesting. You leverage the crowd, those crowd models, where you put everyone, like you believe that everyone can help. And when things become a little bit more complex and whatever, you have centers that then go and help those centers. So given this type of approach that you have, do you think these guys are going to be out of a job?
No, if I look at the growth of my own organization and the other developers and our partners that we use, it's never enough. In the better part of the last decade, I've seen the portfolio of apps that we have grow by 20% every year, and it's exponentially going up. So I think that the digital ambition, even for a business like ours that's not innately built on technology, is increasing beyond the point that any number of human developers is going to be able to contain or fulfill.
There you have it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's short of resources, right? If you ask anybody what their biggest challenge is, I just don't have enough talent.
And one of the interesting things is during these past 3 months, I talked with 2 CIOs. And it was interesting because they were both extreme. And you never really tend to have people that have like mid of the line spectrum opinions. But one of them had stopped immediately when the Copilot, Gen AI type of announcements were made. He stopped immediately hiring of new developers. And the other one thought, I'm going to need more developers. And so he increased the amount of people that he hired. And so I asked both, why did you do that? And I knew why that guy was stopped. And then I told him, do you realize that attrition will eventually reduce this to 0, right? You'll have 0 developers and the systems are unable to build this. Oh, it's okay, this is going to be really effective. And the other guy, what the other guy said is, we're going to have a lot of technical debt because these tools generate code much faster that no one understands. And so I think I need more people. And so these were two types of answers that in the end, I think missed the point, which is what you're saying, is that the business is getting used to having things that they can control and that can give them a competitive advantage, or at least they can ask for something and it gets done, which is something that didn't happen in the past, right?
Yeah, and culturally, I think it's changing as well. Our users are getting more impatient. I mean, more than half the workforce is under 35 and used to getting what they need quickly. So I think the age of IT asking people to queue for their work to be done, can you wait 8 months for your system, 9 months for us to get to your request? I think that time is ending.
Gone.
Yeah.
This is the era of immediate gratification and selfies. So I think this would be a great time to end this interview, but I was going to ask you, one of the things that really impressed me is that you have created an internal career plan where a citizen developer can actually graduate into a senior developer or senior architect of OutSystems, for instance, through classes and all of that. Can you just basically explain very quickly how you're putting that in place and the tools that you're using and the process?
Well, I think it's just a structured framework around what already kind of existed, because in like you say, in many companies or in every department, there's always that one guy or one girl, right, who's building automation, doing the Microsoft Access thing, or playing with Power Apps, or deploying all these Excel spreadsheets with like tons of macros. There's always that person, right, who's really into automation. So I think given that we cannot keep growing exponentially, right, for the number of engineers that's centrally driven and doing all the work centrally, so some of this is going to need to be decentralized across the business, and that's fine with the existing employees that they have, if they have an interest in this. So if they want to get certification in OutSystems, in low code, or even cloud certification, we offer that to the business as well, Agile certified people. So all these technology certifications and capabilities that used to be maybe just IT or technology, the business is getting really interested and adopting that really, really quickly. So I think it's just an alternative career path.
Yeah, and you guys have implemented like a whole stepwise thing where, like a lot of the community that we have here, especially the ones that have become senior developers here, have gone from a lot of the past that you guys are putting in place at Petronas. This is a fantastic story. You guys are doing fantastic things. You have really cool shirts.
I'll get you one.
I actually have one, but yours is cooler. And it's just fantastic. We've learned, I have to tell you one thing. We have been learning a lot from Petronas, from the way they have staggered the development, the way they have integrated IT with the citizen developer program, just the sheer size of the ambition. And so it's really a privilege to have you here, Lisa, together with your team. You have a fantastic Petronas team, and I think the community here was very lucky to have you guys here on stage. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.